Hey, everyone, and welcome to this deep dive all about empathy.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into this topic because, well, honestly, I think the world needs a little more understanding these days.
I completely agree with that.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Like how divided everything feels right now, right?
Yes, and you know what?
It
It turns out
Yeah.
empathy is more than just a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually something we can all develop, a skill.
100%. It's fascinating how much attention empathy is getting
Isn't it?
lately, not just from psychologists, but even in fields like tech.
Yeah,
It really speaks to
right.
like a growing awareness of how important it is.
Like we need that connection.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got everybody talking about it, Brené Brown, the Dalai Lama.
Oh, yeah, they're all over it.
But I think where it really gets interesting is when you start to see how it's being applied in unexpected areas like
Yeah, where is it?
AI,
Oh, wow.
artificial intelligence.
That's a perfect example
Right.
of how this concept of empathy is evolving.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think it's just about feeling sorry for someone,
Right.
but it's really about understanding
Yeah.
another person's perspective and emotions and,
Even if you don't agree with them.
Right, exactly.
That reminds me of that example from Brené Brown
Oh, yeah.
about how saying, at least it's not worse,
Yeah,
can be totally unhelpful
right,
when someone's really struggling.
right.
It's like you're just dismissing their experience instead of actually listening.
That's exactly it. That illustrates the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Oh, okay.
Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, while empathy is putting yourself in their shoes.
Okay.
And as Brown points out,
Yeah.
that deeper understanding is what really builds connection.
Okay, but let's be real. In our crazy busy world with everyone glued to their devices, is it even possible to cultivate empathy?
Yeah,
Like, I feel like sometimes I can barely hold a conversation for more than like 5 minutes
right.
without getting distracted.
It's so true. And there's actually research from Oxford
Is there really?
that found that people interrupt each other
No what?
after only 17 seconds of conversation. Think about that.
Oh my gosh.
We're so quick to jump in with our own thoughts that we don't really listen.
Wow.
And if we're not listening, we're not going to understand.
17 seconds, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So are you saying we need to intentionally work on building our empathy muscles?
I am saying that
Hey.
it's a skill and it requires practice.
Makes sense.
Especially,
Is this world overflowing with distraction?
Exactly. And it's not just touchy-feely stuff either.
Really?
There are actual, like
what?
measurable benefits.
Okay.
Well, for instance,
Yeah.
there was this study that showed that nurses who practice empathy have lower burnout rates.
Interesting.
There's even research showing that empathy training can actually change our brains.
Wait, hold on. Change our brains. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so researchers at Yale found that empathy training increases activity in the brain regions.
Associated with compassion.
Okay.
This suggests that,
Yeah.
empathy works like building a muscle.
Yeah.
The more we practice it,
Right.
the stronger our capacity for it becomes.
Wow. So it's not just about being a nice person. It's about rewiring our brains for better connections.
You got it.
Okay.
It's about making the choice
Right.
to engage with the world
Okay.
in a more understanding and compassionate way.
I'm convinced. Sign me up for empathy training.
Yeah.
But really, what are like some practical steps
Yeah.
we can take?
There's some great strategies in your source material.
Okay.
One of the most important is listening to learn, not just to reply.
Oh, man. I'm so guilty of that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm already thinking about what I'm going to say next instead of really, like, focusing on what they're trying to tell me.
We all been there.
Yeah.
It's a natural tendency, but when we can train ourselves to be present
Yeah.
and absorb what someone is saying,
Yeah.
that's a huge step towards empathy.
Okay, so listen to learn. What else? Another powerful technique
Yeah.
is to just ask, tell me more.
Okay.
This shows the other person that you're truly interested in their perspective,
Yeah.
and it encourages them to open up.
I like that one. It's so simple, but it really shows that you're genuinely interested.
Right. And finally, make sure you're validating the other person's feelings
Okay.
without judgment. Even if you don't agree with their viewpoint,
Right.
you can still acknowledge and respect how they feel.
So instead of saying, you shouldn't feel that way,
Right.
you might say something like, it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now.
Exactly.
Right.
It creates a safe space for the other person to feel heard and understood.
This is making sense. But how do we actually apply this in real life?
Yeah.
Like, say you're in a disagreement with someone, like a debate about something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Can empathy really help navigate that kind of situation?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's where empathy can be the most challenging and also the most valuable.
Right. When emotions are running high, it's tough to step back and try to understand where the other person is coming from.
So what are we supposed to do? Just bite our tongues and agree with everything they say?
Not at all.
Okay.
Empathy isn't about agreeing.
Got it.
It's about understanding.
Yeah.
So even if you have a strong disagreement with someone's viewpoint, you can still try to grasp their perspective.
Okay.
Ask yourself, like, what experiences might have shaped their beliefs?
Okay.
What fears or concerns might be driving their argument?
I like that instead of trying to win the argument, you're trying to understand the person.
Right.
Yeah.
And that shift in perspective
Right.
can make all the difference.
Yeah.
It can de-escalate the situation, open up space for dialogue,
Wow.
and maybe even lead you to some common ground.
This is really making me rethink how I approach disagreements.
Yeah,
It's almost like empathy is this secret weapon for navigating conflict.
it can be.
Yeah.
And the more we practice it, the more natural it becomes. You know, that study about people interrupting after 17 seconds.
Right.
Imagine if we could train ourselves to listen for just a little bit longer.
Right.
You know, 18 seconds,
Yeah.
then 20, then 30.
It's like a tiny change that could have a huge impact.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the power of empathy.
Yeah.
It's not some unattainable ideal.
Right.
It's a skill we can all develop.
Yeah.
And the more we practice it, the more connected and compassionate our lives become.
This has been so eye-opening, but I'm curious, is empathy something you can learn from other cultures?
Yeah.
I remember the source material mentioned something about sobremesa in Spain and the Indian philosophy of shared joys and sorrows.
Hmm.
I have to admit, those are new to me.
I love those examples.
Okay.
They really highlight how empathy is expressed and experienced in diverse ways across different cultures.
Can you tell me more about them?
Sure.
What exactly is sobremesa?
In Spain, sobremesa is the time spent lingering at the table after a meal. Talking and connecting, it's about savoring the company of those around you, not just rushing off to the next thing.
So it's like built-in time for connection. I love that.
It is,
Yeah.
and it really highlights how different cultures prioritize empathy and connection.
Yeah?
Then there's the Indian philosophy of vasudhaiva kutumbakam, which translates to the whole world is one family.
The whole world is one family.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
It speaks to a profound sense of interconnectedness and responsibility for each other's well-being.
It makes you wonder, do you think those different cultural perspectives actually influence how people experience and express empathy?
That's a great question, and there's research suggesting that might be the case.
Really?
For example, studies have shown that people from cultures that emphasize community and interdependence,
Okay.
like many Asian and African cultures, tend to be more attuned to the emotional states of others.
That makes sense. If you see the world as one big family, you're probably more likely to notice and respond to the needs of those around you.
Exactly. On the other hand, cultures that prioritize individual achievement, like
Right.
the dominant culture in the U.S.,
Yeah.
often emphasize personal goals and independence.
Interesting. So does that mean people from individualistic cultures are just less empathetic?
Not necessarily. It's not about one culture being better than another
Right.
when it comes to empathy.
Yeah.
It's more that the ways in which empathy is expressed and experienced can be influenced by different cultural norms.
I see. So it's not a judgment. It's just a difference in approach.
Right. And that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Understanding those differences can help us build more meaningful connections across cultures.
This is all fascinating, but I keep coming back to what we can actually do
Right.
to develop our own empathy.
Uh-huh.
It feels like we've covered so much ground, but I still want to know, how do we put this into practice in our everyday lives?
I love that you keep bringing it back to action.
Yeah.
Because that's what really matters. And the good news is,
Okay.
cultivating empathy doesn't require some grand gesture. It starts with those small,
Yeah.
conscious choices in our daily interactions.
Right.
Remember those suggestions we discussed? Listening to learn, asking, tell me more, and validating feelings without judgment.
Those are great starting points. And I think it's also important to remember that empathy is a practice.
Absolutely.
It's not something we're going to perfect overnight.
Right.
We're all going to have those moments when we get caught up in our own perspective and miss the mark.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is to keep practicing,
Yeah,
keep striving to connect on a deeper level.
absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And it's important to be patient with ourselves along the way.
Yeah.
The more we cultivate empathy, the more natural it becomes, and the more rewarding our interactions with others will be.
I love the idea of empathy as a muscle we're trying to strengthen.
Well,
What are some exercises we can do to give those empathy muscles a good workout?
I love that analogy, and there are some really practical exercises we can incorporate into our daily lives.
Okay.
One of the simplest is to practice active listening. Instead of just waiting for your turn to speak, really focus on what the other person is saying.
Okay.
Pay attention to their body language, their tone of voice, the emotions they're expressing.
Okay.
And when they're finished speaking,
Yeah.
try summarizing what you heard to make sure you understood correctly.
That's a great one. It forces you to be present and really engage with what they're sharing. What else is?
Another powerful exercise is to try stepping into someone else's shoes, quite literally.
Literally, what do you mean by that?
Imagine a situation where you have a conflict with someone,
Okay.
maybe a disagreement at work or a misunderstanding with a friend.
Got it.
Now, take a few minutes to imagine yourself in their position.
Okay.
What might they be thinking? What might they be feeling?
Okay.
What experiences might have shaped their perspective?
That's a really interesting exercise. It forces you to consider perspectives that might be totally different from your own.
Exactly.
Right.
And it can help you approach the situation with more understanding and compassion.
Okay, so active listening and perspective taking. Those are great. Any other empathy workouts we can try?
One more I'd recommend is to simply ask more questions.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of assuming you know what someone is thinking or feeling, ask them.
Okay.
And be genuinely curious about their response.
So instead of saying something like, you must be so stressed about this,
Right.
you might ask, how are you feeling about all of this?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about inviting them to share their experience and showing them that you genuinely care about what they have to say.
These exercises are great, simple, practical, and anyone can do them. But I do have one more question.
Okay.
Are there any downsides to empathy? Could there be too much of a good thing?
That's a really insightful question.
Okay.
And the answer is yes, there can be. Too much empathy, or rather, empathy without healthy boundaries,
Okay.
can lead to something called empathy fatigue.
Empathy fatigue. I've never heard of that before.
It's a very real phenomenon, especially for people in caregiving professions.
Oh, okay.
But it can affect anyone who is highly sensitive to the emotions of others.
What are the signs of empathy fatigue?
Some common signs include feeling emotionally drained,
Okay.
overwhelmed,
Yeah.
cynical or detached.
Got it.
You might even experience physical symptoms
Oh, wow.
like headaches, insomnia, or digestive issues.
That doesn't sound good at all. What can we do to prevent or manage empathy fatigue?
The key is to prioritize self-care.
Okay.
Make sure you're getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, exercising regularly,
Right.
and engaging in activities that bring you joy.
Yeah.
It's also important to set boundaries and to learn to say no when you're feeling overwhelmed.
That's such a good point. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You need to take care of yourself so you can better care for others.
Exactly. Empathy's a beautiful thing.
Right.
But it's not about sacrificing your own well-being.
Right.
It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between caring for yourself and caring for others.
I'm so glad you brought that up. This conversation has been so rich and
Yeah.
insightful. We've covered so much, the science, the cultural perspectives,
Yeah.
the importance of self-care.
Yeah.
It feels like there's still so much more to explore.
There is, and that brings us to our final part where we'll be diving into how empathy is being applied in unexpected places,
Okay.
like the world of technology and artificial intelligence.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah,
I can't wait to dive into that.
it's going to be good.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Welcome back. We are diving into this next topic, empathy and technology. It seems so unexpected.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it's a really fascinating area, one of the most rapidly evolving areas of research.
The source material mentioned AI being trained to detect emotional cues. Like, is that real?
Absolutely, and the implications are huge. I mean,
Yep.
if AI can understand and respond to human emotions, it could totally change how we interact with technology.
So we're not talking about robots that can like cry or laugh or anything.
No, not yet at least.
Okay, so what are some like real world examples?
There are so many, and more are emerging all the time. Like customer service is a big one.
Okay.
Imagine a chatbot that can not only answer your questions, but also sense if you're getting frustrated
Right.
and, adjust its approach.
That would be a game changer.
Right. No more yelling at those automated phone systems.
Exactly what else?
Well, it's also being used in healthcare to
Yeah.
provide support and companionship, especially for patients who are isolated or lonely.
Oh, wow.
And then there's education.
Mm-hmm.
Empathetic AI could be used to create personalized learning experiences
Interesting.
that adapt to a student's emotional state and their learning style.
Wow, those are some incredible applications. But if I'm being honest, this whole idea of AI with empathy kind of makes me nervous.
I get it.
It's a little creepy.
It's natural to feel some apprehension when we're talking about, technology taking on qualities that we've always considered uniquely human,
Right.
like empathy.
Yeah, like what if they get so good at like mimicking empathy that we can't even tell the difference between like real compassion and artificial compassion?
Right.
What happens to human connection then?
Those are such important questions, and they highlight why we need to approach this technology very carefully and thoughtfully.
Right.
We need to be mindful of the potential risks
For sure.
and make sure empathetic AI is developed and used ethically, in ways that benefit humanity and don't exploit it.
So it's not just about the technical stuff, it's about the ethics too.
100%.
Yeah.
We need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Like what?
Like, how do we ensure empathetic AI is used responsibly?
Right.
How do we protect privacy and prevent manipulation?
Right.
How do we even define and measure, like, authentic empathy in a machine?
Yeah, those are big questions.
They
I
are.
don't know if I have the answers.
And that's okay. The important thing is that we're asking these questions and having these conversations. As AI keeps evolving and becoming more sophisticated, we need to have an open dialogue about the ethical implications.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we're using it to enhance human connection, not replace it.
This whole deep dive has been quite the journey. We've explored the science, the cultural aspects, and now this mind-blowing idea of empathetic AI.
It really has.
It's incredible how much ground we've covered.
Yeah, it shows how empathy is much more than just a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Right.
It's this complex, multifaceted topic, and it has the potential to change our lives and the world around us.
So if there's one thing you want our listener to walk away with from this deep dive, what would it be?
That empathy is a skill we can all develop.
Yeah.
And that it's more important now than ever before,
Right.
in a world that feels increasingly divided.
Absolutely.
Empathy can be the bridge that connects us, the language that helps us understand each other, and the driving force
I love that.
behind positive change.
That's beautifully said. And it brings us full circle to those thinkers we started with, Brené Brown to the Dalai Lama.
Oh, yeah.
They remind us that empathy isn't just about being nice.
Right.
It's about showing up, being present, and truly listening to one another.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing that our shared humanity is far greater than our differences.
100%.
So to you, dear listener, we
Yeah.
say this. The next time you find yourself in a disagreement, facing a challenge, or even just interacting with someone who's different from you,
Yeah,
try approaching the situation with curiosity and empathy.
you got it.
You might be surprised at what you discover, not only about the other person,
Right.
but about yourself as well.
That's the beauty of it.
And remember, empathy is a practice, not a perfection.
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to stumble and make mistakes, but the more we cultivate it,
Yeah,
the more connected, compassionate, and fulfilling our lives will become.
I agree with that.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of empathy. We hope it's inspired you to embrace the power of connection and to approach the world with a little more compassion.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and keep practicing empathy. It's a gift you give not only to others, but also to yourself.
Welcome back. We've covered so much about empathy already, like the science behind it,
Yeah,
how it looks in different cultures,
right.
and even the importance of those boundaries you're talking about.
It's important.
Yeah, but now I want to get to the part that really caught my attention.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
Empathy and technology, it seems so unexpected.
I know it might seem counterintuitive, but it really is
Yeah.
a fascinating and rapidly evolving area.
You mentioned AI being trained to detect emotions. Like, is that a real thing?
Absolutely, it's happening, and the implications are huge.
Okay.
I mean, if AI can understand and respond to our emotions,
Right.
it could totally change how we interact with technology.
So we're not talking about robots that can cry or laugh or anything.
Not yet, at least.
Okay, what are some like real world examples?
Well, there are so many, and more are emerging all the time,
Cool.
like customer service.
Yeah.
Imagine a chatbot that can not only answer your questions, but also sense if you're getting frustrated
Okay.
and then adjust its approach.
So it would know like how I'm feeling
Exactly.
and change how it's interacting with me.
Exactly.
Wow, that would be a game changer. No more yelling at those automated phone systems.
Right.
What else?
It's being explored in healthcare
Okay.
to provide support and companionship for patients who are isolated or lonely.
That makes sense.
And in education,
Okay.
empathetic AI could help create those personalized learning experiences
Right.
that adapt to a student's emotions and learning style.
It's amazing how much potential there is for all of this.
It really is.
I have to be honest, though, this whole idea of AI with empathy,
Yeah,
it makes me a little nervous.
I get it.
Like, what if they get so good at faking empathy that we can't tell the difference between real and artificial compassion?
Right.
What happens to human connection?
You're getting on some really important questions there.
Yeah.
And it highlights why we need to approach this technology really carefully and thoughtfully.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful of the risks
Right.
and make sure this tech is used ethically
Right.
in ways that benefit us and don't exploit us.
So it's not just about the tech itself, but how we use it.
100%, we need to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Like what kind of questions?
Like, how do we ensure it's used responsibly?
Right.
How do we protect our privacy and prevent manipulation?
Yeah.
How do we even define and measure authentic empathy in a machine?
I don't know if I have the answers to those questions.
And that's, okay, the important thing is that we're asking them and having these conversations.
Right, right.
As AI keeps evolving, we need to have an open dialogue about the ethical implications.
Okay.
We need to make sure we're using it to enhance human connection, not replace it.
This whole deep dive has been quite a journey.
It really has.
We've explored the science,
Yeah.
the cultural aspects,
Mm-hmm.
and now this mind-blowing idea of empathetic AI.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
It's incredible how much ground we've covered.
Yeah, it shows how empathy is much more than just a feeling.
Right.
It's this complex thing, and it has the potential to change our lives.
And the world around us.
Absolutely.
So if there's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this entire deep dive, what would it be?
I would say that empathy is a skill
Yeah.
that we can all develop.
Right?
And it's more important now than ever,
Yeah.
especially in a world that feels so divided.
Right.
Empathy can be the bridge that connects us,
Yeah.
the language that helps us understand each other, and the driving force
I love
for
that.
positive change.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to those thinkers we started with, Brené Brown and the Dalai Lama.
Oh, yeah.
They remind us that empathy isn't just about being nice.
Uh-huh.
It's about showing up, being present, and truly listening to one another.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our shared humanity
Yeah.
is far greater than our differences.
So to you, dear listener, we say this the next time you're in a disagreement, facing a challenge,
Yeah.
or just interacting with someone who's different from you. Try approaching the situation with curiosity and empathy.
You got it.
You might be surprised at what you discover, not only about the other person,
Right.
but about yourself as well.
That's the beauty of it.
And remember, empathy is a practice, not a perfection.
Absolutely.
We're all going to stumble and make mistakes,
Yeah.
but the more we cultivate it, the more connected, compassionate, and fulfilling our lives will become.
100%.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into empathy. We hope it's inspired you to embrace the power of connection and to approach the world with a little more compassion.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and keep practicing empathy. It's a gift you give not only to others, but also to yourself.